Yeah, I got you. I got it.
Got it?
Right. Yeah.
All right. So, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome, my brothers and sisters, to another edition of our podcast, Meat and Potatoes. Here are my two co-hosts, brother Kenneth from Dallas, Texas, and brother Rashid from Sacramento. Assalamu alaikum, my brothers.
Alaikum
Wa
salam
alaikum
wa
assalam wa
rahmatullahi
rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It's been a while. We haven't been in each other's company in quite some time, but it's good to see you, brothers, and it's good to be back at the dinner table for another episode of Meat and Potatoes. Um, Tonight we're going to talk about halal entertainment. But before we start, we'll open with a short dua. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an- I'm sorry. Alhamdulillah rabbil alameen wa salatu wa salam wa Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. All praise and thanks belongs to Allah, Lord of the worlds. I send salutations and prayers upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, upon his family, and upon all the companions. Ameen. So before we start, I want to make sure we don't get too far off topic, as when people talk about halal entertainment, the first thing that usually comes to their mind is music. So this isn't going to be an episode about music and its permissibility or not. We might talk about it a little bit, but that's not the main objective of this episode. So we want to talk about what is halal entertainment. I guess the basic thing is that anything that is permissible according to the teachings of Islam. So is going to the movies halal entertainment? I would say yes, unless it's a movie that has sex and gratuitous violence. Is partying necessarily partying, whatever that really means, halal? Um, should we go to parties? Should we go to restaurants that are playing music and that sort of thing? And of course, with the holidays around, there's also entertainment involved in that. Should you go to Christmas parties with your job or at your job? Uh, when your family's having a party, should you be in that space? And then, of course, what do we consider to be halal entertainment? What is good, wholesome entertainment from the Muslim perspective? Um, so I know for me, I work at a corporate job at a law firm, and every year they have the Christmas party. It's Christmas dinner, really. It's at a restaurant, and but the restaurant's just a regular restaurant. Yes, they do serve alcohol over there, which I don't partake in, and they do a grab bag game thing at the towards the end, which I've been participating in for quite some time. Um, but I don't. Even though they offer alcohol, I don't partake in that. Um, and so I try to keep it halal for myself. And they know that I'm a Muslim, so usually they don't ask me if I want to drink or anything. Usually this time of year it's always holiday music, but they play holiday music in the office and in the elevator and all over, so you can't avoid that. I have no control over that. But then there are other things that are you probably shouldn't be doing. You shouldn't go to I don't go to bars that are exclusively bars because I don't want to be around alcohol. Even and most of my friends, they no longer invite me to those kind of things anyway. And of course, I don't desire to go to those places. But I'm sure people find themselves conflicted, especially new Muslims, because yesterday they were doing X, Y, and Z, and today they're told they need to give it up. But so and I'm a movie guy. I go to movies a lot with my kids. Um, I try to. My kids are still a couple of my kids are still pretty young, so we try to keep it PG, PG. Even though my daughter's 13, but I try to shield them as well as myself from you know grotesque use of bad language, and of course any uh, uh, sexual content, because I deem that not only is it haram, but it's not good for me as well, and I don't want them seeing it because that's just crazy. There's enough of that even on television nowadays, which I'm trying to wean myself off that as well. But in today's society, I don't think anything is really safe anymore. Because I mean, even the things as a kid that were safe today, they moved the line to where now you can use more bad language and even regular TV shows. And then even the sports is getting crazy because the sports is fighting and bad words and gestures and all this other stuff that just it's just crazy. So So yeah, so what do we think, brothers? What do you think, brother Ken?
Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulullah. So I think you mentioned quite a lot of different things in there, brother Abdul Rashid, in your opening, mashallah. Um, and just to kind of, I think, put things into perspective a bit. I think when we speak about halal entertainment, we speak about, you know, hobbies, things we like to do during our downtime, just means of, keeping ourselves, entertained. And I think that many times when we first convert to Islam, especially when we speak to many of our new brothers and sisters, our born Muslim brothers and sisters. It's very easy to get this perception that, oh my God, everything is haram now. Especially due to the fact that I think there's this stigma, I think, in many pockets of the Muslim community, where something that's considered perfectly halal, which is perfectly halal. Certain Muslim pockets considered haram just because it's something that's from the West or something that is from that's traditionally from America, and not really based off any actual Islamic text or readings, but just based off this cultural perception, right? And I know, brother Rashid, you mentioned a couple things in your past, and I'm sure that once we get to you, you can elaborate on that really interesting story you told us before. But basically, kind of like I think what you said in the beginning, brother Abdul Rashid, essentially everything is halal unless it's explicitly made haram. So when it comes to entertainment, the good news is believe the vast majority of hobbies and means of uh entertaining ourselves is halal, is permissible. Watching sports, going to the movies, even playing video games. Even though there's a lot of negative perceptions about video games, we know that back during the Columbine shooting, that a lot of our lawmakers were saying, oh, it's because they played violent video games. Even though now there are many studies that show there's really no really direct link between violent behavior and violent video games. But for the vast majority of our means of hobbies and entertaining ourselves, the vast majority of it, of course, is halal. Besides, of course, what is obviously haram, like you said about Abdurrashid, going to a bar, going to the strip club, watching movies that are very sexually explicit, things of that nature. And so I don't want to focus too much on that because I think that in of itself is pretty um, apparent. But instead, I think what I want to kind of talk about in this part of the segment is really the dangers of becoming too indulgent in one's hobbies or in one's means of entertainment, because we know that there are various hadith narrations of the Prophet ﷺ, peace and blessings be upon him, where he warns us about wasting too much of our time. The Prophet ﷺ even said in a hadith that one of the things that we will be asked by Allah is how we utilized our time. The Prophet ﷺ, peace and blessings be upon him, also said that one of the things that we should utilize while we have it is our time. When we have one of the things that we will regret not utilizing properly when we have it is time. And so it's very important for us to make sure that we're utilizing our time properly, right? And so that I think is kind of one of the biggest dangers, at least for me, if I'm speaking for myself, because like you brought up there, I like watching movies and some of my favorite TV shows and stuff like that. But and even playing video games. But I think that the danger comes when we spend too much of our time indulging in these hobbies, spending like 5, 8, 12 hours a day doing these things, to the point where we're missing our obligatory prayers. We're not going to the masjid. We're not spending any time in bettering ourselves Islamically, right? And that, I think, is really where it becomes in danger. So it's really important for us to make sure that when we are um when we're doing our different hobbies or entertaining ourselves in a halal fashion, that we do it in moderation, right? We shouldn't be spending, 5 hours every day, watching movies, playing video games, um, even, playing sports. Sports is actually that in itself is somewhat of a sin. We know the Prophet ﷺ encouraged horseback riding um,
Wrestling,
wrestling,
yeah,
right? Wrestling
archery,
and
archery.
archery. So staying active and being physically active is actually a sunnah, right? So playing sports is actually can even be a means of getting a reward depending on your intentions. But even just again, the danger comes where we are prioritizing these hobbies and means of entertainment over our uh, ibad, over our worship, and that's where the rabbit hole that we can kind of fall into, and what we just need to be careful about.
That's interesting. But what do you say, Brother Rashid? Back to that.
Bismillah. Um, I agree with a lot of what was said previously, especially the time commitment piece, and I'll touch on that in a moment. And I think one of the sad pieces of it is that once a person becomes Muslim, if someone is not from these lands, then the Haram police comes out sometimes, where they want to haram everything that individual used to do, and sometimes it's not necessarily that activity is haram. It's just that maybe sometimes people from other lands don't know that thing to be normal here in the U.S. and maybe they're not spending a lot of time with it. But we just want to be very careful about the haram police and those who have been Muslim a long time. We want to be gentle towards those that just become Muslim. We don't want to tell them that they have to stop doing every single little thing that they used to do, or else we're going to end up backing people away from Islam because they're going to view it as being too difficult of a deen, difficult of a religion. And folks need to really also understand too that we as Muslims, we can have fun. Islam is a lifestyle. Yes, we do pray 5 times a day. Yes, there are some dietary restrictions. Yes, there are certain rules that we are certain commands that we need to adhere to. But we as Muslims can have fun. Just because we took Shahada or took our declaration of faith doesn't mean we can't go out and enjoy life. Islam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches beauty. And we're supposed to go out and enjoy those things. And I'll touch on it really quickly, but Kenneth hinted towards a story that I shared before. And real quickly, there was a brother who took his Shahada. He was into skateboarding. And then some of the older people in the community told him that skateboarding was haram. And him not knowing and him wanting to be a good Muslim, he stopped riding his skateboard, completely stopped. Well, here it is some 20 some odd years later, and clearly he knows now that that's not necessarily the truth. So he's starting to get back into it. He's starting to enjoy his old hobby. But that to me is an example of how the haram police can come out and make one believe that you just absolutely cannot have fun in this religion. And that is so far from the truth. And Allah knows best.
Allah knows best. I mean, so yeah, I want to circle back to the time aspect, wasting our time. So I was talking to another brother, and he was like, whatever you do, quote unquote, having fun, entertaining, being with your family, your friends, especially if they're non-Muslims, you use that time to do whatever the activity is. But you can also use that time while you're doing the activity to talk to them about Islam. I know for myself, I don't play a lot of video games, but when I do play video games, I usually play with this one particular friend of mine. And during the game, I'm always trying to drop little nuggets for him. And to the point where now we started reading Quran together. Now he's not ready to take his Shahada quite yet. But we're playing, Call of Duty or we're playing PGA golf, or whatever, and we're talking Islam. So I'm getting to have some fun, entertainment, and I'm also getting some chance to talk, do some dawah. So I think and it even goes even further. Like the person I was talking to was like, even when you're going out to dinner with your family or even at work, you try to maximize the time and use the time to do, kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. And so, so I found that to be very interesting. And of course, even he started playing softball on a softball team, and they play in the league, but his team is like the only 100% Muslim team in the league. So he's so they're doing dawah. He's keeping the company of the Muslims, and he's getting a chance to play softball and play sports, which I think So you're right, brother Rashid. Muslims have fun too, and we can do all that. We can watch our time, and we can use that time to have entertainment, to have fun, and to educate those around us.
Hmm.
But
I think
yeah, go ahead, brother Ken.
I think that's a very very good point. And I just kind of want to kind of circle back to Brother Rashid's point regarding the haram police and people haraming everything. And what I kind of want uh, to point out there is like, how do we, okay, especially if we're new Muslims who are just kind of getting started, how do we kind of know whether an activity is halal or haram, right? And we've spoken here on this podcast before about the importance of identifying people of knowledge who you can rely upon, like your local imam or somebody, and the importance of of not being afraid to ask questions, not being afraid to ask where you can find in the primary sources the evidence of the impermissibility of such an act. Because we have to remember, despite the stigma in our beloved Muslim community, the default is actually halal until proven haram, even though you kind of find in the community, it kind of feels like it's the other way around. Everyone's kind of like haram until proven halal. But in reality, it's the sunnah is it is halal unless it's proven haram. And so it's important for us to understand that. And so when Brother Rashid mentioned the skateboarding, you know, the brothers who I don't know who told him that, but like these are probably the same brothers who also love playing cricket and
And
watching
soccer.
cricket games. And I'm like, and it's just kind of like, okay, what would make cricket halal and skateboarding haram? Like that doesn't
Or
even
soccer.
just logically, or soccer or football as it's called in the rest of the world. um, that just doesn't make any sense. And of course, a lot of times it's just really because it's a Western sport. I mean, so what? Or some people will just kind of take it to the extreme and saying, "Oh, well, that's a kafir sport, so you're imitating the kuffar, then the disbelievers by playing that." And it's just again, people just kind of over generalizing and just kind of misunderstanding certain concepts. Hence the vast importance of having a person of knowledge like an imam or a scholar that you can turn to ask these questions and get some clarification, because there's just a lot of misconceptions out there. Um, I also just find it really interesting, brother Abdul Rashid, how you kind of spoke about that you utilize these times when you're playing video games with your friends to actually drop gems of da'wah, and I think that's actually really interesting. And just kind of to further add on to that, spending some time with our non-Muslim friends during halal activities is also a good mean. That in and of itself is a good means of da'wah, because it shows them that hey, Muslims have fun too. When all just a bunch of just frowning people always thinking about, um, you know, always thinking about death and all these things, and just want to just sit in the masjid all day and do nothing else. And as a matter of fact, the peace be upon him actually would forbid such as action, because that's form of being like of monkhood, where you throw away the entirety of the dunya and just spend time in spiritual worship all day every day. This is actually forbidden in Islam. You should be going out and making an income, making a living and being part of the community, not just sitting in the house of worship all day, right?
Right.
So it's also a good means of just showing your non-Muslim friends that, hey, Islam it's a moderate religion. It's not a extreme on one side or the other.
Right, and it's a full lifestyle. So we're entitled to have fun, uh, on different levels. And I know for me, like I think I do it all. I've played sports as a Muslim. I watch sports. I have a favorite basketball teams, but it also goes back to the time thing. I don't if I'm home and I'm watching a game and prayer comes in, there's no I just stop and go pray. But if I'm at the event itself, that's a little different. That's a little different to maneuver. Even when even at work, I mean, it's easier for me to maneuver at work. But if you're at a sporting arena, especially in the Western country where there's no place for you, no predetermined place for you to pray, then you gotta figure out how you're gonna get your prayer in and still be there doing whatever you're doing.
Mm.
But so yeah, I know. I think unfortunately, a lot of people perceive us to be very nomadic, and all we want to do is study, 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 read, 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 pray, 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 and it makes us very boring people. But like you said, I think that was something the prophet, frowned upon, and we should frown upon it as well. And we need to maintain, our relations with our family and our friends and our coworkers, and show them all the sides of Islam. Yeah, we do pray, we do study, but we do have fun as well.
Right. And I think for the new Muslim, I think maybe one general rule, and I'm no sheikh, I'm no scholar, and I'm sure brothers can add or subtract to what I'm going to say. But for the new Muslim, the general rule, I know when I first became Muslim, I was advised anything that involves gambling or intoxicants, stay away from it. There's
Mm-hmm.
no questions about those things. Other things, there's different rules, and you'll learn as you go. And we serve a merciful God. So he's going to forgive you for the things that you inadvertently do or you do unknowingly. But if you shy away from gambling and intoxicants, that's a thing right there. That's a general rule. Maybe we can walk out the door with. And to come back on the time issue just a little bit. I know Suleiman alayhi salam, I know there was a story where he was given a whole bunch of horses. And then he was warned when he was given those horses to take care of those things, but don't miss your salat behind taking care of those animals. And he loved those animals. So that just speaks to what brothers was saying earlier about time. And I know years and years ago, I used to be an avid football fan, crazy football fan. I would wake up in the morning, do my fajr, boom, I'm in front of the TV. I'm watching the pregame of the pregame show, then watch the morning football game, then the post football game, then the after football game, then the post football game, then the night game. And next thing you know, my whole Sunday is gone. And in there, my prayers are late. I'm not spending time with my family. So I had to, after the season was over, I had to really look in the mirror. And I'm not saying this to brag, but just inshallah ta'ala as a point of inspiration, if you will. But I had to take stock in what I was doing on that Sunday, spending my whole day following football and following the players and knowing the injured reserve list, as opposed to really focusing on other things that were a lot more important. So if that's a general rule, people can maybe throw into the mix, time, intoxicants, and gambling. Maybe inshallah ta'ala, that's a thing we can run with until we learn more about this beautiful thing.
So, Brother Rashid, were you also into fantasy football?
Fantasy, yes, I was in the fantasy football league. Matter of fact, I won that year. I won the fantasy football league. I was into injured reserve, all of that. Niner Raider fan in that order.
There was no money involved in that though. Well, no gambling, right? I'm just kidding. You don't have to answer that. You don't have to answer that.
I mean, I don't really know I don't really know the fifth of fantasy football.
Me neither. I don't want to know because I don't participate. But
because we know, I don't want to get too down the rabbit hole of talking about game, but we know that when, for example, putting money into competitions can be participating in actually can be, depending on how it's done,
Okay.
can be halal depending on how it's done. So, for example, if you need to pay a fee to participate in a competition, and then the collective fee is used to like reward the winner, depending on your intentions, that actually is it can be fine, can be halal. But if it's like for the sake of just trying to win money, that could actually make it into more of like the harami aspect. But again, this is not really the fiqh
Again.
of fantasy football, or fiqh of competitions. Though maybe inshallah, brother Rashid can do a fiqh class on fantasy football for us one day, since he has
Inshallah,
the
inshallah.
Allah.
So brothers, we're coming close to our dinner, so it's time for our dessert round, and I'll let you go, brother Rashid.
It's been a minute, so yeah, I got to bring the bean pie vanilla ice cream.
Mm,
Gotta go my staple and add
My,
the ice cream in there.
my
So
favorite dessert.
a la mode.
well, in conclusion, I would just like to say that spend your time, especially for the new Muslim and even as veteran Muslims, prayer. Focus on your prayer and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance and ask him to keep your feet firm on his path. And over time, what you're gonna feel is you're gonna know what's right and what's wrong. If you're about to do something and if it just feels wrong, maybe follow your instincts and stay away from that thing. And if anything is gray, try to shy away from that as well. And then ask somebody who you trust, ask somebody who you think may know and have the right answers, and that's going to guide you down the right path. But we serve a merciful Lord. If you inadvertently do something that you shouldn't do and you know it, then just ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness, make tawbah, and try your best not to repeat that thing. But if you do repeat it, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for mercy again. Again, we serve a most merciful, loving God. And may Allah keep all of our feet firm in his path and shy us away from the gray areas.
I mean, brother Kenneth, what are you bringing?
Um, I'm gonna bring some lemon cookies, inshallah. My aunt made some lemon
Inshallah.
cookies last week. They were really good, nice and moist and lemony, with a little bit of lemon glaze on top.
Those are
So
the best ones.
yeah, that's what I'm bringing, inshallah. Um, so I guess just reiterate what brother Rashid said, just the importance of prioritizing, right? And also just reminding ourselves that we're not living to keep ourselves entertained. The purpose of our life is not entertainment, right? And it can be very, very easy to kind of fall into that trap where we're basically living to be entertained. We spending all our time on YouTube or TikTok or um, uh, Instagram, or whatever it is that we like to do, using all of our downtime when we're not working, just indulging in entertainment. It's very, very easy, especially these days when our cell phones are just always like right next to us. And even I can find myself sometimes just inadvertently, without even thinking, grabbing my phone, just watching some stupid videos for like an hour or five. So it's just important to remind ourselves that we're not living to entertain ourselves. We're living for the sake of worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So while again, it's fine to entertain ourselves and have hobbies and indulge in hobbies in moderation, we have to remind ourselves this is not our purpose for living. And I guess I'm just one practical piece of advice: movie theaters. Because brother Abdul Rashid, you mentioned going to the game, and then the difficulties of kind of like getting giving your salah, getting your prayers in during while you're in the stadium. And it's somewhat similar when it comes to film as well, because depending on films can be pretty long these days, 2 hours, even like 3+ hours. You're going to go and see Avatar or an Avengers movie. Those movies can be like 3 hours plus, right? And so it can be, if you're not careful, it can be very easy to kind of miss a prayer, miss a window for a prayer time when you're going to the movies. And so, practical advice: what I usually try to do is, whenever I want to go see a film, I try to go after Isha, after the last prayer, so that way I don't have to worry, or at least after Maghrib, because the time window for Isha is all the way up until almost Fajr time. Though some say up until 1 o'clock in the morning, depending on which school of thought that you follow. But generally, you have basically all night to pray Isha, right? So at least until after Maghrib, the sunset prayer is usually when I try to go to a film, because that way I don't have to worry about missing a prayer. So try and do that, or if you're going with a non-Muslim family member or friend who wants to go to an early showing, see if you can just pick a time where you can get your prayer in, and you have that window where you can comfortably see your film without worrying about the prayer time going out. So always plan your activities in accordance to the timing of the salah and timing of the prayers. You do that, and you should be golden, inshallah.
Inshallah. That's beautiful. So I'm going to bring homemade brownies. My daughter, who's 11, she just started cooking, and she made her first batch of brownies last week, and they were better than my own. And I'm no baker. But she made hers from scratch. I usually scratch the box open. So anyway, we're having Aria. That's her name. Her name is Aria. We're gonna have Aria's fudge brownies.
Delicious.
So yeah. So what you guys said, I think it's all great stuff, and watching your time and making sure you make provisions for prayer. These are all great gems for the Muslims. My final thing is just like Kenneth said earlier, it's going to be whatever entertainment you're doing. You should perceive it as halal unless it's haram, not haram then halal. You should make good use of your time. You can use that time of entertainment to have entertainment and to do dawah if you're with your non-Muslim friends. But remember, we're not robots, even though people look at us like that. So make time, there's 24 hours in a day plus your 5 daily prayers. There should be time enough in the day for us to do it all: study, work, worship, and entertainment. And halal entertainment. So I think we need to be mindful of that. And like Kenneth said, also Allah's going to ask us, how do we use our time? And I think if you keep that in mind, whatever you're doing, it'll keep you on a straight and narrow. With social media, you can go down the rabbit hole and be on your phone for hours, looking at videos. And not all the videos are bad, because some of the videos are good. You can you can be watching Omar Suleiman or this guy or that guy or Cookbar and this or that. It's all good, beneficial information, but that shouldn't be your go-to for information all the time. Read a book sometimes, right?
Or meat and potatoes.
Or meat and potatoes podcast, because these are all these can help you, depending on where you are in your journey. So if you make good use of your time and when you're doing entertainment, you try to add these other components to it, you won't go wrong. So I want to thank you, brothers. Thank the listeners and the viewers, and we will see you next time at the dinner table. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, good.